I'm Dr. Rachel Langley. I'm a family medicine doctor. I also have 5 kids, ages 1 to 12 at this time. And something that I hear from parents all the time is, how do I talk to my kids about sex? Sometimes parents even want to just push their preteen into my office and have me do all the talking, and then maybe wait in the waiting room while I get it over with, and then they're done, right? But that's not the way that this ideally works. So let's talk about this. No matter what ages your children are, hopefully I can reassure you that this isn't that bad. And that's one of the great things about being a parent too, is that I happen to be a Christian, a Catholic, so I have ways that I want to emphasize different parts of growing up and our bodies maturing, and you have your opinions as well, how you want to raise your kids. And our kids are going to do whatever they want and go off and do live their own lives, because they're going to be fully functional human adults at one point as well. But I like to encourage parents to not be so scared of what classrooms are teaching or what other influences from the culture are coming down one way or another. That having an open conversation with your kids, knowing that your kids feel comfortable talking to you about anything at all, is really one of the great benefits of having this kind of lifelong conversation about sex with your kids. That it doesn't have to be something that can be ruined by one afternoon of a movie theater of a movie that you didn't really want them to see. No, they're going to get exposed to all sorts of things, and they're still going to be healthy adults, and it's still going to be beautiful. So starting with very little babies, you even start with them. It's not just one talk and you're done. No, no, no. This is a lifetime of conversation with your kids about their amazing bodies and what they can do. And yeah, so starting with little babies, talking appropriately with them about all their body parts. You tell them those are their toes and that's their belly button. Belly buttons are important because they're ticklish and they're fun to to play with and to tickle. And also you have a penis, you have testicles inside of a scrotum, or you might have a vulva. That's an important one, a clitoris, as well as a vagina. It's not just all a vagina down there. There's different parts, and that's important for them to know. This, I'm sure you've read and heard in articles before, but that is actually a protective thing against child molesters, child abuse, is the kids knowing their proper terms. So if all of a sudden, I mean, maybe you've heard this story before, a little girl comes home and suddenly starts calling it her cupcake, and you've never called it a cupcake before in your life, that can show you that someone is talking about that area of her body, and it's not in an appropriate way, most likely. But if she already knows that that's a vulva and labia, those are important words for her to know, so she can talk about that, and if there's something wrong going on, God forbid, that she can be more specific in what's happening to her body. Back to normal, healthy parenting in a perfect world without any of that. Teaching correct names from the very beginning in the bathtub, including clitoris. Kids notice that certain areas feel different when they touch them than others, and that's a fair thing for them to wonder about. So talking about, there's actually a lot of nerves in your penis that make it feel so different than other parts of your skin. Isn't that interesting? And then ages 2 to 5, they're getting bigger. At least my little boys always have their hands in their pants, and we have to talk about when it's appropriate for them to touch those areas of their body and when it's not. Not at the dinner table, please, and don't put your feet on the table while you're at it. And another important thing to teach at this age is that they are in charge of their bodies. So that's something that most doctors will talk about when they're doing, if they need to do genital exams. They talk about that this is something that mommy and daddy are right there. Mommy and daddy are saying that this is okay, and I'm asking you for permission too, that I need to look in your diaper area or under your underpants to make sure that things are healthy. Is that okay? I'm going to tell you what I'm doing so that nothing surprises you, and tell you why I'm doing it too. So that's an important thing to start setting up from the beginning, that they are in charge of their own bodies. If they say no to a genital exam in a doctor's visit and it's just a well visit for no concerns, then no big deal. We can put this off for another time. It's more important for them to teach, for them to realize and to really know that those parts of their body especially are theirs and no one else gets to look or touch without their permission. And then they start getting older. Around 6 to 8, I have the conversation about things that they could see online or things that their friends could show them on their phones. That's, I think something like 75% of kids have seen pornography by age 10. It's just really, really early, and kids are curious, and their brains are kind of hardwired to be interested in that. So to talk about how these pictures that they might happen to see, whether they try to see it or a friend shows it to them or they do a Google search by accident and get something they weren't expecting, what to do in those cases. It's not a matter of that's bad or blaming. It's a matter of it might interest you. It might make you feel uncomfortable. Either way, that's not a good way to treat the people's bodies who are pictured there. So we need to close it. We need to walk away from the computer. We need to tell someone, and we need to avoid those, because those can kind of burn their images into your mind, and that's not such a good thing. And starting to look into there's lots of companies out there to help keep your kids safe. So try to set those up on all your devices to make sure that they're not in over their heads for what they find on the internet. It's also a good time to start talking about what puberty is like, what happens in puberty. It's pretty early, so we're definitely talking about that on before they start reaching puberty themselves. So talking about hair growth, breast development, even maybe into periods, just the beginning discussion of that for boys and girls, that this is going to happen. And talking about the basics. I mean, whenever they ask a question for all of this is a good time to talk about what they are curious about. Now, I've definitely assumed that my kids were asking something bigger and more serious than they were, and answered and surprised them greatly with my answer when they were really asking a much more simple question. So try to listen to exactly what they're asking and answer just that question, if that makes sense. They don't need to know all the answers right away necessarily. Age appropriate. That's why this is not one big conversation. This is an age appropriate gradation of what they want to know, what they're ready to know, and that's okay. So the basics of how babies are made, about sperm and egg coming together, a little bit of mom, a little bit of dad coming together to make a baby. Very basic. There's lots of more complications and more interesting situations than that, but start with the basics and we'll keep working on that. Around ages 9 to 12 is around when they're going to start hitting adolescence, hitting puberty. So that's when for sure you want to have the internet safety backups on devices, on phones. They have ones for each individual computer. They have ones out there for I think even for your entire Wi-Fi in your house you can set up, so that even if their friends come over and are accessing your Wi-Fi, that might be a protected area as well. But no matter what, they're going to see pictures at some point or videos that maybe you don't want them to see, and so having that discussion of what they do if they come across those pictures or if someone shows them to them is an important conversation to have no matter what. And then for my patients and my kids, I love to talk about adolescence in particular, and not just about the obvious you're going to start growing and this is going to change and that's going to change and that's going to smell funny, but more the internal stuff of adolescence too, which in a way matters more to them. So the strong emotions that you start feeling during adolescence and what to do with those. The lack of self-esteem all of a sudden that you have, that all of a sudden for one reason or another you don't feel that you're as good as the people around you, as your peers. I'm going off of these, sorry they're so small. Peer pressure, feeling like you want to do what the people around you are doing and what to do with that. And obviously the physical changes too, and the emotional sides of crushes, how you might become really attached to people and what to do with that. I like to be guided by books with this. I take my 12-year-olds on a special trip, or Dad is going to take the boys, where we go through, we like the book Preparing for Adolescence by James, who's that by? By Dr. James Dobson. It's not a perfect book by any means, but it's a guideline. We listen to it together as an audiobook and talk about it. And again, it's not perfect. It's not exactly the way I would want to teach my kids about this, but it's a guideline, and it covers some of the more difficult things to say out loud to your child, your baby. It says them for you, and then you can talk about it and see if there's questions, and then just leave it open as something that they can always, if they have further questions, come back to you, and know that you're not going to shame them for asking those questions because you both listened to it together. But there's other books out there. I'm going to link to put names of books in the comments as well, of good ones to fall back on. A lot of areas offer classes. I know here in Colorado Springs, the St. Francis Hospital happens to offer an adolescence class, particularly for girls. So I encourage that. I know that the Messy Parenting Project also has classes for boys and girls that you take with your parent as well. Love those, especially love it being with the parent, so that you can hear what your child is hearing and talk about it more in depth later. It's also good to take advantage of little times like when you're sitting and watching a movie and something comes up and you say, oh, that didn't seem like she was actually that interested in that. That didn't seem like a good thing. Being able to talk about consent, being able to talk about whether this might be moving a little bit forward. What do you think about this movie? Are they moving a little bit fast in this relationship? Or do you think that this is something that's really good for them? Just things to talk about. Don't make it an awkward silence moment. Take advantage of it as a time to talk about these issues with your child. This is also a good time to talk about basic hygiene, maybe a bra for girls, showering, using soap in certain places, starting to use deodorant, that sort of things. This is not something that they're just going to pick up from their friends necessarily. This is your job to tell them you need to start taking a shower every day and using soap in these locations every day. You're probably going to start noticing their bedroom starts being a little bit different smelling as well, and that's something that's your job as a parent to talk to them about. Ages 13 on up, keep the discussion open. Keep being willing to have these conversations. I love the car for this. It's while I'm driving, I can glance back at them to see how they're taking, but I don't have to look them in the face all the time while I'm having awkward discussions. And that's a beautiful and fine thing. They don't have to look at me either, because there's not necessarily something you want to look your mom in the eye after she says something sometimes, and that's fair. And also talk about what other adults in their lives might be good to talk about these kinds of issues, because sometimes it's too awkward to talk to mom or dad. That's okay. Who are other safe adults? Hopefully your doctor is another safe adult. I try to tell my teenagers that they can always call, text, email me. I'm also a direct primary care doctor, which means I can spend more time with my patients and have that kind of relationships with the family. So I love that. That's one of the parts I love about my job. So other safe adults, doctors, all good stuff. So hopefully this is a good guideline. It didn't scare you too much. I promise. I mean, you can do this. They are your kids. You love them most of all, of anyone in the world. So you are the right one to teach them about this sort of thing. And if you're interested in watching other videos, I've got that video there that I think might be applicable. And be sure to, there we go, subscribe to my channel so you find out when I release more videos. Thanks for watching.